Sid Roth here. Welcome to my world where it's naturally supernatural. My guest, Darren Wilson, has put together a video. He traveled the world to literally, what did the Lord tell you his purpose of this video is?
Well, it's basically to show what he's doing around the world and to give people, to show that his love isn't just a theory, it's a reality. And really what his love and what his kingdom looks like.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, it takes someone out of religion and into where God wants you in the first place, and that's intimacy with him, relationship with him. It's got nothing to do with religion. But give me a brief thumbnail sketch of what they'll see in this video.
Sure. I mean, the film is really my personal journey around the world. So we get everything from seeing gold dust and gold teeth to manna to you're seeing kids, teenagers on the streets healing people, people being raised from the dead, gypsies in Eastern Europe who've been radically changed, the underground church in China. All kinds.
Tell me about the underground church in China.
Well,
what's going on there?
Oh, well, it's growing in leaps and bounds. It's growing rapidly, and they're having all kinds of miracles happen on a regular basis.
But you know what? When I saw their faces, it did something to me. How about you?
Yeah, it does something to everybody who sees it.
I want to see what happens to you. I want you to take a look at real believers in the Messiah.
In this church, the people wake up at 4:30 to come together for 2 hours to pray and worship. They do this every day. This church meets in the only place they are safe, a cave. This church meets on a farm, far away from prying eyes. Here's an example of an underground church outreach. The people sitting are Christians. The people who are standing are not. This particular preacher was once crippled, but was healed when someone prayed for her. She now preaches the good news of Jesus to anyone who will listen. In this particular meeting, over 1,000 people became Christians. This is a church service attended by over 6,000 people, and while that may sound like a lot, you have to understand, this one church has over 300,000 members. This is often how churches operate in China. They start by getting everyone's attention using drama or music. Then they pray for the sick. This has become common practice in the Chinese church, and for good reason. As Dennis put it,
I've seen AIDS patients completely delivered recently, a lot of different healings, and the healings and the miracles are one reason that many people come to the Lord.
here Christians cast out demons from an 18-year-old girl. She's now a preacher. In Shanghai alone, there are over 3,000 house churches, just like this one. One thing Dennis pointed out to me was that most of the underground churches in China are actually led by young people. These kids have all come out of the communist system, and they want nothing to do with it. They only want to spread the love of Jesus to everybody they meet. This is a music school. Well, that's the cover anyway. It's really a training school for students who want to be pastors. The government thinks they're simply learning to play instruments. One thing I quickly realized about the Chinese church is that it's a lot different from the American one. For one thing, they think a 4-hour sermon is short. But more than that, even, is how different their services looked from ours. I mean, see for yourself what happens when a desperate people plug into a powerful God. This is a Sunday school class. What's the big deal about that, you ask? Well, none of these kids' parents are Christians. They send their kids here so they will learn to be good children. Nearly all of these children will eventually lead their parents to the Lord. In this church service, it's 120 degrees inside the building. The people meet for 12 hours straight. Dennis told me one story about a time he went to a very remote village in China to preach. He was led into a large room where the people were packed so closely together that he had his back to the wall and could reach out and touch the row in front of him. Everyone stood. There was no room to sit. He asked how long he should preach for, and they told him from 8:30 to 7 at night. Then they asked him if it wasn't too much trouble, could you come back tomorrow and preach from 8:30 to 7 again? And then, very sheepishly, they asked again, if you'd be so kind, could you come back the day after that and preach from 8:30 to 7? He asked how often he should take breaks, and they told him not to stop. The people will wait. Then he asked them what he should preach on. Everything, they replied, from Genesis to Revelation. And then it dawned on him. These people
There with Darren Wilson, and Darren was literally commissioned by God to travel the world and capture the miraculous. I'll tell you, one of my favorite things that I saw in your video, Darren, was when you went with Jason Westerfield out on the campus of Yale University. Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, I was actually told by a friend that I trust that I got to meet this guy, Jason Westerfield, in Connecticut. And so I went there. I had one day with him. I'd never met him before. And we went to the heart of Yale University's campus. And while we were there, Jason just had a really powerful experience with the Lord. And he kind of, was having this experience, and I'm off to the side waiting patiently for him to stop having this experience so we can go film. And afterwards, he came up and he was relaying to me some of the things that he saw. And I was like, wow, that's pretty neat that you had that happen to you. Meanwhile, I was very bored. But so then he looked at me kind of strange, and I've since talked to him, and he said, I asked him why he did this. He said, the Lord told him to do it. So he looked at me and he said, do you want to see into the spiritual realm? And I said, sure. Hit me with your best shot. And so he says, take off your glasses. And so I took my glasses off, and he put his hands on my eyes and said a real simple prayer. He said, Lord, open his eyes and let him see. And he still had his hands on my eyes, and he said to me, he's like, now Darren, just so you know, when I take my hands off of your eyes, you're going to see into the spiritual realm, so don't get too freaked out. And so I'm like, okay. And so he takes his hand off my eyes, and he says, now look up there between those two chimneys. And I look up there, and there was these little poppy, sparkly firecrackers going off in the sky. Saw them with my bare eyes. I'm putting my glasses back on. I'm like, what is this? And it opened up like a banner.
Now, it wasn't just through the power of suggestion.
No, I mean, I'm seeing these things pop off. It's like the 4th of July in the sky. And I said, what is that? And he says, that's the glory of God. That's the glory realm of the supernatural. I'm like, holy cow! And so he says, he points down the alleyway. He said, hey, look, they're down there. And I look in the shadows. They're popping off in the shadows. And this is just blowing my mind. And so he said, oh, turn around and look. And I turn around, and keep in mind, 5 minutes before this happened, I was bored out of my mind. And so I'm like just walking around. We're in a big, huge courtyard, and I know what the courtyard looked like 5 minutes before. And so I turn around, and half of the courtyard is covered in this thick fog, and the other half, there's no fog.
Is there any natural explanation?
No. Unless those firecrackers were, I don't know. But no, so I said, what is that? And Jason said, that's the glory cloud. That's the cloud of God's presence. And this, it was the strangest thing that's ever happened to me. I was so shocked that I remember I picked up my camera. I never even thought to hit record or anything like that. And we walked out of the courtyard, and we hit the street. And one of the guys who was with us, he said, look down the street. And so we looked down, and the cloud was following us. and it was the whole street's covered in this fog.
Now, when you were commissioned by an angel to document the supernatural, you didn't expect to be living it, did you?
I didn't expect to be living it, no. I thought I was just the messenger. So, and so at that point, that's when Jason said, he's like, well, God's here, so now we can pretty much do whatever we want.
I would like to see a clip from the film of a homeless man. What did you think of that particular clip?
It's probably my favorite part of the movie. I remember at this point, this was actually the 1-year anniversary of when I started filming the movie, and I knew when I was shooting it that it was going to be the end of my film. I knew it, and it was midnight, and we were heading home. And this homeless guy walked up to us, and he's absolute stereotype. Everybody's met this guy. You know, he smells, he's limping, he's asking for money, and Jason told him, he's like, I'll give you some money, but first I want to give you something better.
Let's take a look at that right now.
I was with my friend, Jason Westerfield, and we were heading home when a homeless man approached us. He was a stereotype. He smelled, wouldn't look us in the eye, he had a limp, and he was asking for money. Jason told him he'd give him some money, but first he wanted to give him something better. So first, he prayed for the man's back, which he'd been complaining about. Then, he prayed for his leg. And I just sat there and stared at this man. He had no one, owned nothing, was a homeless bum living on the streets. What was happening to him right now? What was God going to do to show him he loved this man? And that's when I knew. Beyond a shadow of a doubt, this man was going to be healed. Not through anything Jason was doing, or Heidi, or Dennis, or Bill, or whoever, but through the love that God had for this man. He wasn't homeless, he was a prince. He wasn't broken, he was made whole.
So look at you.
Yeah, feels much better.
Feels much better? How you doing?
Good.
This is William. Joy, look at you. You feel lighter?
Yeah.
Those weights have gone, and God healed you right there, and God healed your neck and back, and you look better. You look like, your face looks normal now.
Yeah, thank you very much. I
Yeah.
sure appreciate the Lord work miracles.
God does work miracles. He loves you. God set you up tonight to be right here. You thought you were coming for silver and gold, some money, but the Lord said, hey, I got something better for you. He'll give you that, but He wanted to bless you tonight. You're His son. He loves you.
But I appreciate everything.
Yeah, God bless you.
Out here with Darren Wilson. And Darren, you told me that homeless guy that was panhandling for money, after he got physically healed, what did he do about the money?
He totally forgot. He was so happy and so excited. He forgot to ask for it.
And you told me you've been showing this film all over to students. You showed it at Judson University, where you're a professor. What happened?
Well, we showed it there, and God showed up. I mean, He shows up every time it's shown. And a bunch of kids were healed of depression. I had a girl who 2 days later, I was teaching a class, and she raised her hand before it started. She said, Professor Wilson, I just want to thank you for making that movie. I've struggled with depression my entire life. And after that movie was over, I got prayer, and it's gone. I've every day, like for 2 days now, I've woken up, I'm the happiest person. I've never been this happy. And 2 weeks later, I just talked to her again, and she's still just bubbling over with joy.
And gold dust appears on
Gold dust
when
to
this
about
is shown?
20. Yes, a lot of times that happens. It's just God's glory shows up, and gold dust shows up with it, I guess. But yeah, we showed it at Judson. About 20 students got gold dust on their hands. It was shown at a youth group in Michigan in like 15-minute segments, and they turned it off after the first 15 minutes, turned on the lights, and all the boys were covered in gold dust. Just strange things.
I've got to hear about Mozambique. You met a woman by the name of Heidi Baker, and she has a strategy to reach Mozambique, and in particular, orphans. Tell me what her strategy is.
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me just say that Heidi is the most loving person I've ever encountered in my entire life.
I have to tell you, when I saw your video, it just provoked me to jealousy, and I prayed. I don't know how it affected you or anyone else, but I prayed, God, I want to love people like Heidi.
Yeah. Yeah, she's fantastic. Anyway, what she'll do is they will go into a Muslim village, a village that's never heard the name of Jesus before. They're going deep into the bush of Africa here. And they'll go into these villages, and they'll do some singing and dancing, and everybody comes because of what's going on. And what they'll do, she will then, she'll preach for 15, 20 minutes, tell them that Jesus is real, tell them who he is. They'll usually show the Jesus film at some point. And then what she does then is she says, I'm going to prove to you that Jesus is real. And so she says, bring me your deaf, bring me your blind, bring me your crippled. Whoever you've got in here who needs to be healed, bring them up here right now. And so the village will, they'll bring up their deaf people, say. And she'll ask the whole village, she said, do you all agree this man or this woman is deaf? Do you attest to that? And they'll all say, yes, she's deaf. And so then Heidi and her children, these orphans that she's taken in, will lay hands on this person and they'll pray for him. And instantly, their ears will be open, their eyes will be open, and the entire village will be converted literally in one day because the signs preceded the invitation into the kingdom.
You went to Turkey
Yeah.
With the gypsies. Tell me about the gypsies and tell me about Heidi when she went with you there.
Yeah. Well, the gypsies trip was really interesting. We spent 10 days with the gypsies of Turkey and Bulgaria. And, I didn't realize until I got over there exactly how hated the gypsies are around the world. Here in America, they're kind of like a novelty, or there's something exotic about the gypsies. But over there, they're a real problem. They're scoundrels. They steal. Nobody likes them. And but we went and we were encountering gypsies that had been completely transformed by the love of God, and they had turned their life around. And
they really know how to celebrate.
They know how to celebrate it.
Fun.
Yeah, they love to dance. They love to dance. But so we were over there, and it was actually the last thing that I filmed in the whole journey. We were in Istanbul, in a little gypsy village, and there was Heidi had joined us for the last couple of days out there, and there was a woman there, a Muslim woman, who was blind in one eye, and Heidi was trying to pray for her for healing in her eye, but she had to rely on a Turkish pastor to be her interpreter. And it was a really interesting segment, and as I was filming it, I knew that this was one of those moments where you just dream as a filmmaker. Like, I can't believe I'm capturing this on film, because on the one hand you have Heidi, who again, it just exudes love, and that's her whole life.
When I saw the footage in Mozambique with Heidi, with the orphans, how many orphans does she have?
They have over 7,000.
Did she get that 7,000 orphans? And it seems like she has orphans around her hugging her. She's hugging them all the time. And that love that you said exudes, that's what I'm illustrating right now.
Yeah. And so she's trying to just love this woman and pray for her. But the Turkish pastor wants to convert this woman first. And so you have this kind of dichotomy of, on the one hand, you've got just love with no strings attached, no obligation. Just God loves you, and let God touch you, and then you have to decide for yourself. Whereas on the other hand, you got the religion coming in and saying, no, you have to become a part of our club first, and then you'll get your healing. And so it was this back and forth between these two, and it was just absolutely fascinating to watch.
But there was a line by Heidi Baker that's ringing in my ears. She kept saying to this pastor that was, let's say, legalistic, you have to love them. She was almost pleading, you have to love them.
Yeah, you have to love. It's all about love. And the pastor even said back to her, he says, I do love her, but I want to train her. I need to train her first.
You just didn't get it.
No, didn't get it.
Tell me about something that you saw with your own eyes in Mozambique.
Okay, I'll tell you, it was the one time, the only time where I was filming where I almost dropped the camera because I wasn't prepared for it. And it was the first, we'd gotten to this village, and again, they'd never heard the name of Jesus. And Heidi had called for, the Lord had told her there's a deaf woman here. She has to pray for the deaf woman first, and not to pray for anybody else until you pray for that deaf woman. So she called literally for 20 minutes. And I'm sitting here thinking, 20 minutes, it's like she's not here. You know what I mean? Let's move on. But Heidi's just staunch. I'm not going to pray for anybody until I find this woman. So finally they bring this woman. She probably wasn't there, so I had to go get her. And I remember I asked Heidi, I'm like, what took her so long to get up there? And she looked at me really strange. She said, well, she's deaf. She couldn't hear me calling her. And so like, oh yeah. So this woman gets up and she has her little baby, is like a brand new newborn baby. And she's totally deaf. The whole village testifies, yeah, this lady's deaf. And so Heidi starts to pray for her, and she has her children pray for her. And the woman hears. It's on film. You see it. And I remember holding the camera, and just tears are streaming down my face. I have 2 small children myself, so there's tears, and I'm shaking. And my other camera guy has little children himself, and he could barely hold the camera because you're realizing this woman is finally going to get to hear her baby cry for the first time. She's going to hear her baby, her young child, speak her name for the first time. And I could hardly stand. And the presence of God was so thick there. And then once that happened, the whole village was converted.
Last thought, how has this changed you, Darren?
It's changed my DNA, to be quite honest with you. I mean, it's changed me from literally from the inside out. It's funny, I tell people when they watch the movie, when I go to show it, different places, I said, look, you have to understand, this movie's 0 to 60 in about 2.3 seconds. I've had 2 years to process what I've seen. And in those 2 years, it's completely changed me from the inside out. So that now I know that God He's a God of encounter. He's a God of extreme power, and He's a God of extreme love.
Speaking of extreme love, do you remember what Heidi said? You have to love them. Well, you can't love them until you've experienced love. And I want you right now, don't wait, to experience the love of God. I pray in Yeshua's name that you would have an encounter with the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Don't settle for religion. Don't settle for tradition. There's more. You can experience the love of God. And then you can do what Heidi said to others. You can't give someone something you don't have yourself. Then you can love them. It's time to experience God's love for yourself.